Imagine stepping onto a campus or a virtual online space where you're learning, where AI co teaches your lectures or customizes everything, every assignment in real time, and even runs virtual internships, maybe. As universities, higher education they race to embrace generative tools in every syllabus. We must ask ourselves, are we truly prepping students for tomorrow's workforce or unleashing new ethical challenges? What's happening in the higher education space now that AI is being unleashed to all of us, accessible to most of us? That's what we're going to talk about today. Stay tuned. I'll be right back with Strategy Talks.
Let's strategize together. Let's hear it from an expert. Join the conversation, it's informative and free. You and me, let's talk some strategy. Here's your host, Doreen Morin-van.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Strategy Talks. I am so excited to be here. We're going to talk about AI in education. Yay. And I know that a lot of you that are watching are business owners, are marketers, are founders. But guess what? Most of you have families. Most of you have families, nieces, nephews, children who are in school, who might be getting ready to go to college, or maybe you are someone who is ready to educate yourself more. And with AI coming into the picture, everything, and I mean everything, has changed. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we do, I want to welcome everybody who's here with us live on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube. Thank you for being here. If you're watching this on the replay, put hashtag replay in the comments so myself and my guests know that you're watching this on the replay. And a special shout out to those who listen to Strategy Talks as a podcast. We appreciate you so much. So without much further ado, I'm going to bring onto the stage with me Dr. Elaine Young. How are you today, Elaine?
I'm doing very well, Dorian. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. Well, I stopped our conversation short. We were in the green room. For all of you, if you've ever been in the green room with me, quite a few of you have, we just start talking and the conversation was so good. I'm like, stop, let's just start recording because there is so much to unpack when we talk about education, higher education, and AI. So let's start with the beginning. Elaine, you work for Champlain College, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Here in Vermont.
Yes.
Tell us what you do, because I think it's really it's significant in how this conversation is going to go based on what you see and what you do for the college.
Certainly. Yeah. So I'm currently a department chair for marketing, media, and esports management for Champlain College Online. So I serve students all over the country who are on average age of 36, who are doing education asynchronously online. But this is my 25th year at Champlain College. And so I started in 2000 on campus teaching face-to-face traditional age students. And I've been doing that for probably 23 years. And during that time, if you can think about 2000, right? That was the start of the dot-com boom, then bust. We had a huge change like a sea change in how business was done, right? I even managed a program called e-business back in the day. I've gone through the transition of teaching students and getting them ready for jobs that don't even exist yet. So for example, when social media started happening and Facebook opened up to education and then beyond, and we started to have that social media thing happen and people were like, what do we do with this? I was teaching students in the classroom. We were looking at Twitter. What is Twitter? What is this thing? And then I was having students compare and contrast Twitter with Plurk and Pounce. You're like, what are those? Right? So they were things that they tried to do short form, didn't survive. So I've been through that process. And I also did my dissertation work back in 2007 on technology acceptance and use. And what is it that gets people to adopt and use a technology? So all of this is sort of a perfect storm for this moment we find ourselves in, this moment of disruption, of transformation when it comes to generative AI.
Yeah. So when we were talking earlier, I compared it as I'm listening to you speak about what's happening in the classroom, what you're seeing, what was happening in 2010 when I started my business. Social media before 2010 really had been used by individuals. People were connecting with people from all over the world, right? It was a social thing, social media. And then in 2010, Twitter had come up and some of the other platforms starting to do some paid media, and Facebook pages came on the scenes. And so that's how I started my business, teaching people about social media. Well, at that time, I had almost two teenagers, and very quickly I ended up with four. That's how that works. And so my friends would come to me and say, well, you know about social media. Can you teach us what I need to know? At one point, they also wanted me to teach the children, and I kept saying that I think that is the job of the parent and the school. I can help you figure out what you need to teach them, but the first thing about this is you need to set some rules. And I think now that we're in the space of AI, we're going to talk about AI in higher education, and I'm sure rules and policy is a big part of that. When we talk about that in business, if you've watched some of my shows, you've heard me talk about the first thing you need to do if you own a business and you have employees. You need to set an AI policy, because 71% of employees are bringing AI into the workplace through the phone, right? We were talking about that earlier. And so I'm sure the same thing is in higher ed. But then if you take it back to high school, what were you saying, Elaine, about the differentiator between the kids who just graduate high school, are starting college, and those who will graduate college next year? What is happening in that generation, in those years?
And think about that shift from individuals who started college where Gen AI was not happening like this. And then suddenly it comes onto the scene while they're in college. Well, this is the same time it's coming onto the scene for these younger people who are in like 9th grade, right? And then you shift 4 years ahead, 3.5, 4 years ahead. At the pace at which generative AI exponentially is growing, changing, evolving, with new tools being announced every day, new advances just announced yesterday, Gemini and OpenAI, and doing all of the things. It's moving so quickly that the young people who are in these states are eons apart in their ability to understand how to use it. All right, eons apart, because the most important thing to keep in mind is educators don't know how it works either, because it all came on at the same time. So unless you are somebody who's been steeped in AI creation and coding for 20, 30 years, this is a steep learning curve. And just so if you're interested in learning it and you have time to learn it and you start playing with it, just trying to keep up is almost impossible. So imagine if you aren't interested, or you don't know about it, or you don't have the access to it. How are you as a teacher, and I don't care if it's K-12, higher ed, whatever, but as a person who teaches people, how are you going to get yourself up to speed in a way that helps you feel confident enough to then teach? Because in order to teach, you have to know. And if you don't know, you can't teach. And so all of these platforms are moving so quickly to get this so immersed in everything and give everybody access that we're all getting access at the same time. We're building the plane as we fly it, as people might say. So when it comes to education, it's really hard to go through the systems, the understandings, create policies that people can agree on when you don't even know the implications yet. And schools at the K-12 level have less budget, less access than if you're in rural education, like we are in rural areas. There's even less access. IT teams might not even know the systems and support people for computers at the school know how to give out the Chromebooks and do the thing, but they lock everything down so people don't have access, right? It's a perfect storm for what we used to call the digital divide. And I would say it's going to be an AI divide, right?
Oh, I haven't heard that term used before, but that makes a lot of sense. So bringing it back to what you're seeing in your classrooms, you said the average age is 36. Your students are working. Your students
Yes.
are in the workforce.
Yeah.
So how are you able to bring AI or use AI in your virtual teaching, in your classrooms or in your programs that you are designing? And how are you, we talked about, education is the piece right here, right? I wanted to learn more about AI. I signed up this spring for about 20 webinars, and after about 5, I'm like, I'm never attending another one. It was people who didn't know, teaching people who didn't know. And I was like, this is crazy. I just got to start doing. So how are you integrating AI into what you're doing, and what can we learn from those things? Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So the first thing, and I'm really grateful to the research that I did back in the day around technology use and acceptance, because it's really grounded me in understanding that the hype cycle is the hype cycle, and media and others are going to tell a story to sell advertising. We could talk all about that at another time. And that to be grounded is to understand that there's fundamental things that are not changing. There are fundamental things that don't change. So in marketing, there's fundamental things that are not going to change. You have to understand your audience. You have to think about your purpose. What's your value proposition? That's not going to change. It's the how you do it that's changing. And so the goal in a class when you're teaching marketing is to then infuse that practice into the work someone does. So when we had an assignment of creating buyer personas, now it's like, okay, create one based on what you know. Now use generative AI to help you create one. Compare and contrast. What did you learn from that process? Because what we're doing is centering the critical thinking and the questioning, not the surface level one-off cognitive offload. I don't want to do this thing. I'm going to have this thing do it for me and I'm going to move on. It really is it's you're going to use these tools to help you be more efficient at what you do. And in the classroom, the goal needs to be to strike the balance between how to practice this in a way where you're still doing your work and it's still you, but you are augmenting with a tool so that someone like me as a professor can actually assess that you're actually learning something, right? And that's the sticky thing. So in the online space right now, our students are bringing AI, but not being willing to admit it because, you're lazy or you're a cheater. Our faculty and our administration are wrestling with what would a policy even look like when something changes so fast. So we stick to academic honesty policy, but then each individual instructor sort of has some leeway in how they approach that. As a department chair, my focus is our job is to teach skills and critical thinking to our students who are in the workforce and going out into the workforce, changing jobs, doing whatever they do. If we don't give them the critical thinking skills and the tactical skills of how to use and prompt and try, then we're doing them a disservice. So our work in our marketing area for Champlain College Online in those programs is to find that balance. I think we do okay. I think we could do better. But it's very short into all of this. We don't know where it's leading. There's a lot of speculation, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear. But at the end of the day, things that we needed yesterday, we will still need tomorrow. It is just how we do it that's going to change.
Yeah. So when we were in the green room, we were talking about that younger generation, us being, I'm assuming this, but I think both you and I are Gen X, right?
Yeah.
So we have done the writing by hand. We have done the research. I mean, I remember going into the town library and going to the card catalog, right? And looking
Yes.
and doing the research and
For those of
writing.
you who don't know what a card catalog is, go look it up.
Go look it up. So I remember, I grew up in the Netherlands, but having to go to a special library to do special research for my final exam in Dutch. And so, yeah, that was a whole different, but understanding why you need the pieces and how they fit together, and then analyzing all this stuff. Now, you get a piece here, you get a piece there, you get some data and you put it into AI and you say, analyze this, find a pattern. And so to me, in higher education, the part about going to college is learning how to learning how to apply skills, learning how that critical thinking piece.
Right.
Are we just raising, Gen Z? I love them. Of course, I have 4 of them. But is the next one after that, is that whole generation going to be a generation that can't do critical thinking, that is going to miss out on these things?
Yeah, and I think that's an existential question that I've been thinking about, and I have no answer. How do you teach someone what's real if they don't know what real is? And the reason why I ask it that way is we can manufacture so many things with generative AI. There's world building now that you can create, right? We can create videos and things that look real, but maybe aren't. There's a big difference between someone who is going to be infused with that as they grow up and those of us who didn't have it before. And I think we've seen that with the transition to the web and all sorts of things. And it's not about age, though. And I think that's really important that we understand that there can be the age factor where we're like, this generation can't do it and this generation does it better is very, very different. It's a different experience of what reality is. So how do I teach someone to make connections when they have never experienced any of that before? And that is a really challenging question. And I know colleagues in education who are wrestling with that to the point where they're like, I need to go back to blue books, which for people who don't know, a blue book is a little paper thing that you handwrite your answers in to kind of push that critical thinking. But at the same time, we have a whole generation of young people who've grown up with computers and social media and cell phones. So how is forcing them to go back to handwriting something when they didn't even have to learn how to handwrite going to help them use their brain, right? It's a completely different way of teaching, which is why I think we are at this space in education of having to continue to teach people who know things now so that they can adapt to and connect with how things are changing. But our K-12 educator colleagues have a real challenge to think about how do they change what they do today for the young people and the families that are coming up with this infused into every single thing that they do.
Yeah.
And I don't have an answer. It's a big wrestle. And so when people are looking to educators to know the answers, we don't, because we're in the same place everybody else is. And you learn by practice and doing, but you're not going to be able to help people if they don't have access and if they don't have technology comfort. And so there's a whole lot of human in all of this.
Yeah, I love that. I struggled a lot when my kids were in elementary school, watching them only get sheets where all they had to do was add answers. They weren't writing sentences. They weren't writing, even in math. I kept saying, why aren't you writing 2 times 2 equals 4? all you're writing is the number 4. How are you going to remember? It's much harder for you to remember if you don't have that practice of writing it, right? That's just a simple thought. Now this whole generation, they're just going to push a number 4. They're not even writing
Well,
the number 4, right? So they're
but
just ordering
it's
a multiple
but
choice answer.
but at the same time, though, what you and I needed to learn at a time when there was no technology and we had to remember our phone number because that was the only way you could remember it is gone.
Yeah.
So
Why
so
would that?
the
Yeah.
so what so that is in essence the challenge that educators have, because what parents learned and how they learned for the skill sets that was needed then is not going to be the same kinds of things that students need to learn now to be ready for what is to come. And in K-12, it's a huge challenge, right? Not a K-12 educator, but from just talking with folks, you have systems in place, you have parent involvement, you have lack of funds, lack of resources, and you have more students and less time. And so you're using what you know, but if you haven't been given time to practice and try new things, like it is such a challenge. It's really a challenge. In higher ed, we have a lot more autonomy as professors to teach what we think makes, important sense in what we're doing. Faculty can say no AI in my classroom, and they can do that. Faculty like me can say this is how we're going to use AI in the classroom. And students are going to have different experiences depending on what school they go to, what department they're in, what their major is. So, assuming that colleges are just there to help people get a job, which is a big narrative, and I understand it, we're there to help people become thinkers. But what does a critical thinker look like in the age of AI
Mm.
versus a critical thinker who sat around and employed the Socratic method to talk about philosophical underpinnings of something? Completely different, right? And so when the tech companies are racing to the top to be the one that has all of the things, and everybody's trying to keep up, and CEOs are like, everybody in my company is doing the thing, and the employees in the company are like, no. um, and then you're seeing it happen all around you, right? So what's going to be the reaction? Fear. I can't keep up. I don't know what's happening. I'm not going to have a job. What are my kids going to do? And here's the media going fear, fear, fear. And
Yeah.
it's a perfect storm, especially during transformational disruption in technology. The same stuff, if you want to go back in history and look at what happened when mechanical stuff started happening versus horses, same thing.
Yeah.
When movable type happened back in the day, people are like, oh my God, so it changes everything. This
Everything.
is a huge change. It's exciting to be part of it, but it is also a cautionary thing to think about how do we navigate all of this in a way that um, makes sense. And people are so different, and people's
Right.
perspectives are so different. We have to be mindful about what do we lose and what do we gain.
That's a good one. Elaine, I want to bring up the ethical implications of
Yeah.
AI. When it first came out a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, my youngest son was second year college, maybe. He's got one more year left. So he's in that generation that's going to graduate and everything is going to be AI, right? But when he started, nothing was. Generative AI
Right.
wasn't available. But there were already, he would come home and say, well, we had this discussion forum and somebody copy and pasted something from Chat GPT and he forgot to take out the M dashes or so we knew that's what it was, right? So then that person got called upon by the teacher, and that's just a minor thing. But
Right.
how is higher education? How are the people that are working, that are teaching? How are you looking at the ethical use of
Right.
AI in the classroom, in learning, in taking testing?
Right.
Um,
It's most colleges have academic honesty kinds of policies around cheating and other things, right? But this is, from a higher education standpoint, this is new. We don't have a clear understanding of the implications. And you cannot actually tell if someone's using generative AI unless they do it really poorly. The M dash, guess what, my friends? I use the M dash.
I do too.
Why does generative AI use the M dash? Because we all use the M dash and it was trained on what we do. So there's patterning. Why is the patterning there? Because all of the training shows that humans tend to write in this patterning and this cadence. So whenever you're pointing your fingers at that's Gen AI, it's like, nah, right? It's the vanilla-ness. It is the lack of soul that you can kind of tell, right? It's flat. And so there are many different mindsets in higher ed about this and ethical use. There's bigger questions about ethics, like bias in AI and whose stories are told and what information gets out there. That's huge. Those are big conversations that we have in my classes, that bigger picture stuff. In the day-to-day, it's like I'm not policing AI because what am I going to do? Come up to a student and said, you are a cheater. Who's going to feel good about that? I know you did AI. I got no tools to prove it. There's tools that say we can prove it. No, you can't, because you can put in the Declaration of Independence and it's going to be like that's AI generated, right? So you can't accuse someone of cheating, but what you can do is educate them as to, so do you understand that if you are using generative AI, that's fine. Use it well. And in my classes, I call it sophisticated use. If you're going to use it, show me how you used it. Use it well. Ask me questions about it. Let's talk about it. Use Christopher Penn talks about using a content authenticity statement, something I've been using on my LinkedIn articles too. It's like, yeah, I'm using generative AI. Why? Because I'm practicing, I'm trying, I'm learning. I'm not going to sit back and go, oh, I don't use it. I'm going to be like, this is how I'm using it. This is how I used it here. And what I said in a workshop I gave last week was, for folks who aren't doing that, why? Because we are all learning. So shouldn't we all help each other and educate them and say, so in this post, I used generative AI to create this image for me, and I had to do it 3 times in order to do this. Like, why not say what you did to help educate? Because it's moving so fast that we cannot possibly keep up. And sometimes I think that might be by design.
Oh, yeah, I agree. This is so tough. I love that you mentioned Christopher Penn. He was on early this year in 2025, and he and I talked, and that officially is the longest Strategy Talks episode I've ever put out. It was nearly an hour, and we just talked about all kinds of stuff. So yeah, I'll make sure to link to that for those who are watching and listening. Elaine, we're almost at the end, but let's talk about AI fluency. Is that something that you expect to see, that students coming in this year or maybe in 3 years, at some point, are you going to expect people that come into your classrooms or into your programs to have a basic understanding? How long do you think it will take? Is that an expectation of the college that you work for? Is that an expectation anybody should have? And then when we take that into the workplace, right? You're teaching students in their school, but now they're bringing it in. Is that something that we can expect as business owners? Can we expect somebody to come in and say, well, are you AI fluent? Like, can you use all the tools? Can you do all this stuff for me? Or are we still ways off from that?
I think that's a great question. I think the first question is, what does AI fluency even mean? So Anthropic has put out a course in AI fluency that I think is fabulous. I highly recommend it if people haven't taken it. It's free, and it's a bigger picture look at frameworks to help you identify how and when to use generative AI. And I think that's the fluency. Much like social channels, if you understand the basics of content and how content resonates with people and the foundational stuff, the platforms are going to come and go. What worked yesterday will not work today and won't work tomorrow. The algorithms change, everything changes. So you cannot be someone who says, I'm an Instagram expert, because tomorrow Instagram might change and you're no longer an expert because they changed their stuff. So it is better for you to be a content expert. It is better for you to have fluency in the frameworks that help you navigate AI instead of, I know ChatGPT. Who knows ChatGPT? Like, are y'all building your own servers and throwing stuff on your laptop and doing? No, we're not. The majority of end users are like, I'm using this thing to help me like understand this big long article that I don't want to take the time to read. We're doing cognitive offloading, which is not necessarily a bad thing, right? If it helps you get to what you need to get faster. So I think that educators need to educate themselves. I think that's going to be really important. But do they have to know every tool? No. Do they have to be able to help their students navigate what this means? Yes. Do you have to be able to have really good conversations? Yes. What does this mean in disciplines? Very different. In marketing, where AI has been impacting things that we've been doing for a long time, we've been talking about algorithms. We've been talking about how it services content. We've been digging into that because that's the work that you have to do every day. My colleagues in cybersecurity, there's a lot of work to do in that. So it's both how you approach it, which is, I think, fluency, critical thinking, philosophy, understanding implications. And then there's the tactical implementation in your discipline area that you have to understand and stay on top of. And I think that's the only way we do it. Do I think that colleges are going to have an expectation that people are AI fluent? I don't think we should. I think we should always come from the point of, let's educate you on what we think AI fluency is. And if you're good at it, great. And if you're new to it, we're helping you. From an employer standpoint, never make any assumptions, because that's what you get in trouble with. And you think, oh, that 20-year-old's going to know how to do all this stuff just because they're 20. And obviously they know. No, they don't. The same thing, same trap we had with social media, right? No, they don't. You have to, as an employer, know how AI impacts your area. Then you have to work with your employees to help understand that. My advice for employers is find the 1 or 2 employees you have who are early adopters. They love this stuff. They are excited. They want to play. They want to try. Give them space, time, tools, and access to go play. As they play and learn, they will then share. And then more employees will start to see and try. You will always have a small percentage of employees who will not. And one day they will be left behind. But that's not today and that's not tomorrow. Don't force them, but lean into your early adopters and your early majority to help you get through a lot of this as an employer. I think those would be some of my advice.
That's really, really wonderful advice. And I want to make sure that those of you who were listening, I wanted link to that course that you just mentioned, because I want to make sure that if you want to get this AI fluency that Elaine was talking about, that you have access to that course. And we'll just make sure we put a link in the show notes here. Elaine, how can people connect with you on, because you and I connected on LinkedIn, even though we don't live that far away from each other, we connected on LinkedIn. So you're Dr. Elaine Young on LinkedIn. I'll make sure to link to that in the show notes. And you're happy to meet people, talk to people, other educators, I'm assuming too?
Yeah, I think the conversations in education are deep and rich and conflicted. And I think the conversations around this in the workplace are deep and rich and conflicted. So I think we're all in the same place. We just have to acknowledge that, oh, we're all in this together. It's messy and it's okay.
Yeah. Well, I so enjoyed this conversation. This is definitely a little bit different, even though it's still strategic. It's a little bit different than marketing and business. But I hope that you enjoyed it, that you stayed to the end. We thank you for being here. I'll be back next week with another episode of Strategy Talks. Bye, everybody.